आज भारत विश्व मित्र के रूप में अपनी जगह बना पाया है।
Short session, massive implications. Prime Minister Modi promises historic decisions.
समय के हिसाब से ये बहुत बड़ा है। ऐतिहासिक निर्णयों का एक सत्र है।
Modi's no time for रोना धोना जाए।
रोने धोने के लिए बहुत समय होता है, करते रहिए।
What's on Prime Minister Modi's mind?
हमारे जो संस्कार है, वेद से विवेकानंद तक जो हमने पाया है,
It's something big up government's sleeve. Special session of Parliament. Top focus on 5 Live.
Hello and welcome. The suspense is actually building after the Prime Minister's speech in the Lok Sabha today. The stage is now set for a big announcement that we're expecting to hear at about 6:30 p.m. We have an idea of what it may be, but we're going to tell you right after the headlines. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Shiv. This is 5 Live. The top stories we're tracking. Prime Minister Modi pays tribute to doyens of Parliament, says India indebted to Nehru, Shastri, Indira, Vajpayee, remembers his first term as MP in the Lok Sabha.
भारत के सामान्य मानवी की लोकतंत्र के प्रति श्रद्धा का प्रतिबिंब है कि रेलवे प्लेटफॉर्म पर गुजारा करने वाला एक गरीब परिवार का बच्चा पार्लियामेंट पहुंच गया।
Modi's big message to the opposition as special session kicks off. Prime Minister says, time to stop Rona Dhona and get back to work. He's telling the opposition, stop whining. There's always time for that later.
उमंग और उत्साह के वातावरण में मिले। रोने धोने के लिए बहुत समय होता है, करते रहिए।
But the BJP is in trouble in Tamil Nadu. The BJP AIA-DMK alliance seems to be on the brink. AIA-DMK leader Jayakumar declares there is no alliance with the Saffron Party, blames BJP Tamil Nadu chief Annamalai for the discord. Tamil Nadu Governor Ravi hits out at the ruling DMK, says jihadis want to eradicate Sanatan Dharma. Yoga Guru Ramdev says abusing Hinduism will fail in 2024. BJP accuses Congress of plagiarizing former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran's theme song as their poll tunes, as Congress wants to convert Madhya Pradesh into Pakistan. And a big reminder of the breaking that we're counting down to 6:30 p.m. A big cabinet meeting has been called by the Prime Minister. All eyes are on that crucial cabinet meet. There could be a briefing right after it. Top ministers go into a huddle ahead of the cabinet meet called by Prime Minister Modi. Amit Shah, Piyush Goyal, Prahlad Joshi, Anurag Thakur are meeting as we speak in anticipation of what's going to happen at the cabinet meet. The ministers are also meeting BJP chief JP Nadda. Earlier, remember, Home Minister Amit Shah met with the BJP president as well. At the moment, the Prime Minister has made a speech in Lok Sabha. 4 bills are on the government's tentative list for the Lok Sabha. None of them are the big-ticket, high-profile bills that have been the subject matter of speculation over the last couple of weeks, but they are being discussed right now by members of Team Modi ahead of that big cabinet meeting. So what exactly is this cabinet meeting going to be about? We're going to try and decode that for you in just a bit. All of that speculation, if you thought it was going to be set to rest today, you'd be wrong, because what has really happened is it's been whipped up even more. What the Prime Minister did today with the commencement of the special session, day 1 of that special session and the last day of the old Parliament, has made a surprise move in Parliament. A cabinet meeting is to take place at 6:30 p.m., like I said, where the bills that will be announced may be discussed. Ahead of the session, Prime Minister Modi urged all members of Parliament to dedicate maximum time to this short but massively historic session. The tentative list of the Parliament agenda for the special session includes 8 bills, but the highly debated and speculated One Nation, One Election bill was not included in this lineup. Meanwhile, the India Alliance bloc held a meeting with Congress Chief Kharge at his chambers in Parliament to strategize for the rest of this session. The Congress has made a strong pitch to bring in and pass the Women's Reservation Bill in this 5-day Parliament session.
संसद का ये सत्र, इस पार्श्वभूमि में संसद का ये सत्र, ये सही है कि सत्र छोटा है, लेकिन समय के हिसाब से ये बहुत बड़ा है। ऐतिहासिक निर्णयों का एक सत्र है। ये सत्र की एक विशेषता ये तो है कि आप 75 साल की यात्रा अब नए मुकाम से आरंभ हो रही है। जिस मुकाम पर 75 साल की यात्रा की, वो अत्यंत प्रेरक पल, और अब नए स्थान पर उस यात्रा को आगे बढ़ाते समय नए संकल्प, नई ऊर्जा, नया विश्वास और समय सीमा में 2047 में इस देश को डेवलप कंट्री बना करके रहना है।
महिला रिजर्वेशन का बिल आना चाहिए और महिलाओं को देना चाहिए जो ड्यू है। नेहरू जी के प्रधानमंत्री काल में पहली लोकसभा में केवल वो भी 5% सांसद महिलाएं थी, लेकिन 70 साल के बाद भी आज 14, 15, 10 के अंदर ही है। तो इसीलिए मैं आपसे गुजारिश करूंगा कि इस महिलाओं का जो बिल है इसको आप ये कर दीजिए।
स्पेशल सेशन संसद के स्पेशल मौकों के लिए बुलाए जाते हैं। अभी तक पता नहीं है कि नया मसौदा क्या है। महिला आरक्षण बिल जिंदाबाद, ये देर से आया हुआ फैसला है। यद्यपि हम कोटे के अंदर जो वीकर सेक्शन की महिलाएं हैं, बैकवर्ड कास्ट की और शेड्यूल कास्ट की, उनका भी कोटा चाहते हैं।
देखिए, महिला आरक्षण बिल के साथ बहुत सारे ऐतिहासिक पुरुषों, जिनमें राजीव गांधी जी हैं, उनका नाम जुड़ा हुआ है, भुला नहीं सकते उनके कंट्रीब्यूशन को उस दिशा में जो है। इसलिए भाजपा जिस तरीके से अब हमारे देश के विकास के पुराने इतिहास को नकारने में लगी हुई है, तो हमको डर है कि ऐसा न करे।
So here's a quick reminder, quick look at the 8 bills that are likely to be introduced. These are being discussed right now. The first one is the Advocates Amendment Bill of 2023. Then you've got the Press and Registration of Periodicals Bill of 2023. That's also going to be coming in. The Post Office Bill, it's taken a long time to come. That's also going to be introduced. The Senior Citizens Welfare Bill. And you've also got the Repealing and Amendment Bill. J&K Reservation Amendment Bill is also going to be brought in. The Constitution ST Order Amendment Bill, Constitution J&K SC Order Amendment Bill. So 8 separate bills that are likely to come in. And as you may have noticed, that none of these include the other high-profile bills like, Uniform Civil Code, Women's Reservation, OBC quota, the Chief Election Commissioner and how he or she is appointed. All of those things are not present in this declared list of bills that are under discussion. I want to go across to India Today's Poulomi Saha for more on this. Poulomi, cabinet meeting at 6:30 p.m. Many of the big ministers have already gone into a huddle. Break it down for us. What is this Okay, Piyush Goyal, I'll come back to you in a moment. Piyush Goyal addressing Parliament. I'll come back to you, Polami.
के बाद नए सदन में प्रवेश करेंगे। ऐसी परिस्थिति में हम मुझे लगता है इस गरिमामयी वार्तालाप को और ऊंचा लेके जाए, बजाय के कुछ सांसद, कुछ विदेशी ताकतें अगर जो देश विरोधी है, हमारे देश विरोधी है, ऐसे कुछ वक्तव्यों को लेके हम आपस में एक बटे हुए संसद के रूप में पेश हो, ये बहुत ही दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। मैं आपसे अनुरोध करता हूं इस प्रकार के वक्तव्य जो स्टेटमेंट्स दिए उनको एक्सपंज किया जाए। ये इस गरिमामयी आज की सभा की बैठक का हिस्सा ना बने तो मुझे लगता है इतिहास में एक अच्छा माहौल।
जी जी जी, धन्यवाद। श्री अरुण साहब जी, आप बैठ जाइए। आप क्यों बार बार खड़े हो जाते हैं? जरा हमको, आप क्यों?
माननीय सभापति जी,
प्लीज।
ये मेरा सौभाग्य है कि आज इस संसद भवन के अंतिम दिन के कार्यवाही में बोलने का अवसर मुझे आपने दिया है। आपका धन्यवाद। आज का दिन स्वतंत्र भारत के इतिहास में स्वर्णिम अक्षरों में अंकित होगा। वर्तमान संसद भवन में इस विशेष सत्र में आज ये अंतिम दिन है जब ऐतिहासिक कक्ष में हम सब अंतिम बार हिस्सा लेंगे।
6:30 p.m. is that big cabinet meet. Let's go across to Polami for more on this. Polami, what are you hearing? What is this cabinet meeting about? The agenda, the list of bills doesn't suggest anything out of the ordinary. This seems to be pretty routine, but there is still an air of speculation over what Team Modi could be pulling out of their hat. What are you hearing, Polami?
Well, as far as the cabinet agenda is concerned, it's still under wraps. We don't know what exactly the agenda of this cabinet meeting is at 6:30, but obviously it's given rise to a lot of speculation after it was, after we learned from our sources that this cabinet meeting is happening at about 6:30 p.m. this evening. Usually cabinet meetings should happen on Wednesdays, but this time round it's happening on a Monday, on the first day when the special session has convened. It's happening at 6:30. And that's, added to the speculation that possibly because the government has listed business for Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, it has in fact earmarked these days for listed government legislative business. It's possible that, the cabinet will be taking up something which would be cleared by the cabinet today in order to be brought before Parliament by Wednesday. There's a lot of speculation. We've discussed those, theories in the past as well about these very specific bills, some high profile as well. What has picked up steam since then, of course, is the women's reservation bill. That's only because, there are various signs that suggest that possibly the government is looking at bringing the women's reservation bill to Parliament this time around, not just because it was in the BJP's election manifesto in 2014 and 2019, and we know that the government is going through that election manifesto and those promises that they've made, from the Ram Temple to UCC to the abrogation of Article 370. They're going through those listed promises in the manifesto, and women's reservation was a part of it. The way the opposition has preempted it and has been raising its voice in support of women's reservation bill yesterday at the all-party meeting called by the government pre-session. Today in the House, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, Mallikarjun Kharge all speaking up for supporting I beg your pardon, expressing their support for the women's reservation bill. It's the Prime Minister's reference to the contribution of women parliamentarians, 600 of them in the past 75 years. All of this has given rise to speculation that the women's reservation bill could be brought to Parliament. Now, some, of course, just a quick word, some, of course, argued that, this was a bill which was passed in 2009 in the Rajya Sabha. It wasn't taken up in the Lok Sabha for consideration, and as a result, it lapsed. But I've spoken with a couple of experts, and they've said a bill which has been passed by this, the Council of States, which is the upper house of Parliament, is very much alive. But why the cabinet meeting then? They could just bring that bill? No. Right. If this government wants to make a few specific changes, wants to draft its own bill as far as women's reservation is concerned, then there's a possibility that the cabinet could discuss that today, bring it to the House on Wednesday. Shiv.
Okay, very, very interesting. The women's reservation bill, seeming to stand out just a little bit more in this canvas of speculation, especially since you've got the RSS, you've got the Congress, you've got the BRS and certain others all talking about women's reservation. Now, Mahua Maitra also spoke about it a short while ago. So that appears to be setting the mood for what could possibly, we still don't know for sure, but it could be based on what the members of parliament are also sensing. Of course, the government keeping everything very close to its chest. That big cabinet meeting 75 minutes from now. Polami, thanks very much for getting us that specific update. Now I want to show you why things have become even more suspenseful. It's because the Prime Minister spoke not once but twice today. Once outside Parliament and then again inside Parliament, where he made a 52-minute speech setting the agenda, talking about the history of Parliament and basically indicating and fueling and activating the sense that something big is afoot in Parliament. Listen in to what he said.
मैं पहली बार जब संसद का सदस्य बना और पहली बार एक सांसद के रूप में इस भवन में मैंने प्रवेश किया तो सहज रूप से मैंने इस संसद भवन के दौर पक्ति पर अपना शीश झुका करके इस लोकतंत्र के मंदिर को श्रद्धा भाव से नमन करते हुए मैंने पैर रखा था। वो पल मेरे लिए भावनाओं से भरी हुई थी। भारत के लोकतंत्र की ताकत है, भारत के सामान्य मानवी की लोकतंत्र के प्रति श्रद्धा का प्रतिबिंब है कि रेलवे प्लेटफॉर्म पर गुजारा करने वाला एक गरीब परिवार का बच्चा पार्लियामेंट पहुंच गया। मैंने कभी कल्पना तक नहीं की थी कि देश मुझे इतना सम्मान देगा, इतना आशीर्वाद देगा, इतना प्यार देगा। सोचा नहीं था अध्यक्ष जी। G20 की सफलता 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की है। ये भारत की सफलता है, किसी व्यक्ति की सफलता नहीं है, किसी दल की सफलता नहीं है। भारत के फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर ने, भारत की विविधता ने 60 स्थानों पर 200 से अधिक समिट और उसकी मेजबानी हिंदुस्तान के अलग अलग रंग रूप में देश की अलग अलग सरकारों ने बड़े आन बान शान से की। चंद्रयान 3 की सफलता न सिर्फ पूरा भारत, पूरा देश अभिभूत है और इसमें भारत के सामर्थ्य का एक नया रूप जो आधुनिकता से जुड़ा है, जो विज्ञान से जुड़ा है, जो टेक्नोलॉजी से जुड़ा है, जो 140 करोड़ देशवासियों के संकल्प की शक्ति से जुड़ा हुआ है। आर्टिकल 370 ये सदन हमेशा हमेशा गर्व के साथ कहेगा कि सदन के कारण वन नेशन वन टैक्स, वन नेशन वन टैक्स, जीएसटी का निर्णय भी इसी सदन ने किया। वन रैंक वन पेंशन, ओआरओपी, ये भी इसी सदन ने देखा। गरीबों के लिए 10% आरक्षण कोई विवाद के बिना पहली बार इस देश में करने में सफल रहे। आदरणीय अध्यक्ष जी, भारत के लोकतंत्र में तमाम उतार चढ़ाव हमने देखे और ये सदन लोकतंत्र की ताकत है, लोकतंत्र की ताकत की साक्षी है, जन विश्वास का एक केंद्र बिंदु रहा है। इस सदन की विशेषता देखिए और दुनिया के लोगों का आज भी ऐतराज होता है। ये सदन है जिसमें कभी 4 सांसद वाली पार्टी सत्ता में होती थी और 100 सदस्य वाली पार्टी विपक्ष में बैठती थी। ये भी सामर्थ्य इस सदन के लोकतंत्र की ताकत का परिचय कराता है और यही सदन है जिसमें एक वोट से अटल जी की सरकार गई थी और लोकतंत्र की गरिमा को बढ़ाया था, ये भी इसी सदन में हुआ। पंडित नेहरू जी, शास्त्री जी, वहां से लेकर के अटल जी, मनमोहन सिंह जी तक एक बहुत बड़ी श्रृंखला जिसने इस सदन का नेतृत्व किया है और सदन के माध्यम से देश को दिशा दी है, देश को नए रंग रूप में ढालने के लिए उन्होंने परिश्रम किया है, पुरुषार्थ किया है। आज उन सबका गौरवगान करने का भी अवसर है। ये वो सदन है जहां पंडित जी को इसलिए भी याद किएगा, अनेक बातों के लिए याद करेगा, लेकिन हम जरूर याद करेंगे इसी सदन में पंडित नेहरू का एट द स्ट्रोक ऑफ मिडनाइट की गूंज हम सबको प्रेरित करती रहेगी। इसी सदन में अटल जी ने कहा था, वो शब्द आज भी गूंज रहे हैं इस सदन में, सरकारें आएगी जाएगी, पार्टियां बनेगी बिगड़ेगी, लेकिन ये देश रहना चाहिए। अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी जी का सरकार भी हमने इसी सदन में देखी। सर्व शिक्षा अभियान देश में आज वो महत्वपूर्ण बन गया है। आदिवासी कार्यालय मंत्रालय अटल जी ने बनाया, नॉर्थ ईस्ट का मंत्रालय अटल जी ने बनाया, न्यूक्लियर टेस्ट भारत के सामर्थ्य का परिचायक बन गया।
आप पिच बदल रहे हैं, वरना याद रखिए, जब तक हम अपने जमहूरी उसूलों पर, रूल ऑफ लॉ पर, संविधान पर अटूट अमल नहीं करेंगे, वरना याद रखिए कहीं नई इमारत भी हिटलर की राइक्सटैग की इमारत ना साबित हो जाए। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सर।
ये नहीं, ये श्री अरविंद सावंत जी।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। माननीय चेयरमैन सर, आज एक बड़ा ऐतिहासिक क्षण है। मैं भावुक भी हूं, क्योंकि कभी सपनों में नहीं देखा था कि इस सदन में हम आएंगे। वंदनीय हिंदू हृदय सम्राट शिवसेना प्रमुख श्रीमान बाला साहब ठाकरे जी, उनकी कृपा और आदरणीय शिवसेना के पक्ष प्रमुख उद्धव जी ठाकरे साहब के आशीर्वाद प्रेरणा लेकर हम 2014 में यहाँ आए। जब आए तो मैंने वहां देखा पहले, क्योंकि मैंने वहां माननीय वाजपेयी जी को देखा था ऊपर से। मैं किसी यूनियन की लीडरशिप करता था और उनका वो त्यागपत्र शब्द आज भी मेरे मन में है। वो भाषण मैंने पूरे ध्यान से सुना था। उनके बहुत सारे वाक्य मेरे मन में है। सबसे बड़ा वाक्य मुझे उनका जो मेरे मन में ठसा हुआ है वो है, छोटे मन से आदमी बड़ा नहीं होता। और दुर्भाग्यवश हम किस माहौल में जी रहे वो अगर देखोगे, क्यों इसलिए बोला मैंने कि 2014 में जब हम चुनकर आए तो उद्धव जी ठाकरे साहब थे, बाला साहब नहीं रहे थे। उनकी वजह से हम आए। 2014 हो 2019 हो, हमारी पार्टी के नेता तो वही थे। उन्होंने
One of the most viral sound bites by the Prime Minister today on day one of the special session of Parliament was actually not said inside Parliament, but outside Parliament just before the session began. It was the Prime Minister speaking to the press right outside the old Parliament building, and he used the phrase Rona Dhona, and it was targeted at the opposition. Listen into what he said. It's self-explanatory. You'll know why it's become the most talked about soundbite of the day.
इसी सदन ने इमरजेंसी में लोकतंत्र पर होता हुआ हमला भी देखा था, और इसी सदन ने भारत के लोगों की ताकत को एहसास कराते हुए मजबूत लोकतंत्र की वापसी भी इसी सदन ने देखी थी। इसी सदन में मनमोहन जी की सरकार कैश फॉर वोट को भी, उस कांड को भी सदन ने देखा है। कुछ कड़वी यादें वो भी हैं कि तेलंगाना के हक को दबोचने के लिए भारी प्रयास हुए, खून की नदियां भी बही, और बनने के बाद न तेलंगाना उत्सव मना पाया न आंध्र उत्सव मना पाया। एक कटुता के बीज बो दिए गए। अच्छा होता उसी उमंग और उत्साह के साथ हम तेलंगाना का निर्माण करते, तो एक नई ऊंचाई पर आज तेलंगाना पहुंच चुका होता। अनेक प्रकार से महत्वपूर्ण ये सत्र है। मैं सभी आदरणीय सांसदों से आग्रह करता हूं कि छोटा सत्र है, ज्यादा से ज्यादा समय उनका मिले, उमंग और उत्साह के वातावरण में मिले। रोने धोने के लिए बहुत समय होता है, करते रहिए।
मैं समझता हूं आजादी के बाद सबसे ज्यादा रोने धोने वाले प्रधानमंत्री अगर कोई है तो नरेंद्र मोदी जी हैं। उससे ज्यादा किसी ने रोया धोया हो आज तक तो बता दीजिए। हर बात पे रोते हैं, नोटबंदी करेंगे, आप परेशान हो जाइए, मर जाइए, फिर रोने आ जाएंगे। कोरोना की महामारी होगी, लाखों लोग मर जाएंगे, फिर रोने आ जाएंगे। इसरो के वैज्ञानिक कुछ करेंगे तो उस पर रोने, मतलब हर चीज में उनको रोना है।
I'm not cribbing. Did you hear me cribbing? I'm happy the session is there. I hope we can deliver and do something good for the country.
And here's how the opposition reacted to what the Prime Minister said, whether it was Mallikarjun Kharge or Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary. Here's what the reaction looked like.
आप सोचिए, एक तरफ अकाल, विभाजन, पाकिस्तान और हिंदुस्तान का बंटवारा, लाखों की तादाद के लोगों को जान गंवाने पड़े, सारे देश में तही तही मच गई थी। उसी कठिन हालत में जवाहरलाल नेहरू साहब को ये सरकार को संभालने पड़ी। सर, हमें एप्लीकेशन ऑफ आर्टिकल 370 एंड फ्लाइट ऑफ कश्मीर, ये मुद्दे को भी हमें आलोचना जरूर की थी। कश्मीर हमारा अंग है। सर, आज भी देखिए कश्मीर में हमारे फौजों को जान गंवाने पड़ती। इसमें तो यह साबित होते हैं उस दिन हमारी तरफ से जो शंका जाहिर किए थे वो शंका सही है। सर, आज मैं ये चाहता हूं कि हमारे सदन के अंदर हमारे जो रणकुबड़े जो फौजों ने वहां जान गंवा रहे हैं उसके लिए कम से कम हम थोड़ा सा मौन व्रत करते थे। हमारे देश इसमें तरह तरह की बात तो किए जाते हैं, लेकिन सच तो ये है कि इंक्लूसिवनेस की बात होते हुए भी इंक्लूसिव नहीं है हमारे पार्लियामेंट। आप खुद देख लीजिए, नंबर देख लीजिए, माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी के लोगों को संख्या देख लीजिए और खुद तय कर लीजिए। मैं कुछ नहीं कहूंगा, आज कटुता हम नहीं चाहते। सर, बात यह है कि सर ये हिंदुइज्म की अगर बात करें, हिंदुइज्म क्या होते हैं? हिंदुइज्म में 4 वेद है, मिलियंस ऑफ गॉड्स है, 18 उपनिषद है, 18 उपनिषद है।
बदलना है तो अब हालात बदलो, बदलना है तो अब हालात बदलो, ऐसे नाम बदलने से क्या होता है? हमारे नड्डा साहब इंडी बोलते हैं। ठीक है, उसीलिए तो बोला नाम बदलने से कुछ नहीं होता। इंडी बोलो और कुछ भी बोलो, हम है इंडिया। महिला रिजर्वेशन का बिल आना चाहिए और महिलाओं को देना चाहिए जो ड्यू है। नेहरू जी के प्रधानमंत्री काल में पहली लोकसभा में केवल वो भी 5% सांसद महिलाएं थी, लेकिन 70 साल के बाद भी आज 14, 15, 10 के अंदर ही है। तो इसीलिए मैं आपसे गुजारिश करूंगा कि इस महिलाओं का जो बिल है इसको आप ये कर दीजिए। इतना अंडरमाइन किया हमको कि ये लोग अनपढ़ है, अंगूठे छाप है, ये लोग क्या करेंगे, डेमोक्रेसी को कैसा टिकाएंगे, लेकिन हमने टिका के दिखाया। हमने इसको मजबूत करा, इसका संरक्षण किया और बार बार हमको टोका जाता है 70 साल में आपने क्या किया? अरे 70 साल में तो यही किया हमने, इसको मजबूती दी, इसको मजबूती दी हमने, लोकतंत्र को बचाया हमने और संविधान को लेकर हमने आगे बढ़े।
An absolutely riveting story is playing out right now, viewer, in the United States, and it has the internet completely transfixed. And I've decided to tell you about it because it is utterly fascinating, as you will see. One of the United States military's most advanced fighter aircraft is missing. And the situation has taken on a near farcical, absurd quality, with US authorities formally asking for the public to help search for this missing jet. Now, the story has garnered so much attention. The word F-35, that's the name of this fighter, is trending on social media in countries all across the world, including here in India. Now, let me tell you what happened and try and demystify this for you a little bit. It started with a routine flight of an F-35B, very much like the fighters you see in these pictures, by a US Marine Corps pilot earlier yesterday in South Carolina. Now, this is not only the most advanced American fighter ever built, it's also the most expensive military aircraft program in American history. The Department of Defense, for instance, estimates it will cost nearly $1.7 trillion to buy, operate and sustain the F-35 aircraft, thousands of them, and its systems over its entire lifetime. Now, the United States Armed Forces plan to induct thousands of F-35s across the Air Force, the Navy and the Marine Corps. It was a Marine Corps F-35 that was flying and has gone missing now. Now, the F-35 that's missing is priced at about $80 million and, like I said, was on a routine flight over the American Midwest. The aircraft ran into some kind of mysterious mid-air trouble and the pilot ejected safely. He's fine, he's safe, he's recovering in a hospital. He managed to land in a place called Charleston. Usually when a pilot punches out of a troubled aircraft, the aircraft flies for a bit before diving out of the sky and crashing into the ground because it doesn't have anyone at the stick in the cockpit to keep the entire thing stable. But now where things get a little bizarre. The fighter, this F-35, was in autopilot mode, which means that even without the pilot, the aircraft continued to fly itself in a stable condition, basically like an advanced drone. Basically, the fighter had entered something that many journalists, many observers call zombie mode. It was basically just flying by itself. Now, it isn't clear how much fuel this F-35 was carrying, but this is still a jet that has a pretty sizable, impressive range, which means it may have flown a fair distance. Who knows? Now, the other question that arises is, why can't the damn thing be tracked in the air? Now, the F-35 is a stealth fighter. And while it isn't certain, it's definitely possible that if this fighter was in full stealth configuration, then tracking it would be extremely difficult for ground radars and controllers. In other words, the very technology that makes the F-35 invisible to enemy radars could possibly now be making it impossible to detect even in its own friendly skies. The only thing that can happen in such a situation is that the aircraft flies straight and level until it exhausts all its fuel and then gently descends and crash lands somewhere. It has happened in the past, not just in the United States, but also in Russia. Now, if this aircraft, if this F-35 is in the wilderness, if it has crashed somewhere in a low populated area or in one of the many big lakes that are around the South Carolina area, finding the aircraft will either be difficult or even impossible or unlikely. With its fuel tanks empty, there won't be any telltale fireball and smoke plume. If it lands in the water, it simply disappears without a trace. Now, things have gotten so bizarre that a US congresswoman has also jumped in on all this, and she's chimed in to ask why the US government and authorities are asking for public help to find an $80 million jet. She says if an $80 million jet cannot be tracked, and if things are really so bad that the public is being asked to help find that missing F-35, then really, in every sense, God help us. So that's what a US congresswoman is saying. Now, the logical explanation, like I said, is that the aircraft has probably just, gently crash landed somewhere, probably destroyed, but it didn't have a pilot in the cockpit. How ironic and how fascinating. I want to get a view in from a fighter pilot who knows a thing or two about aircraft and, the kinds of technologies that go into aircraft like the F-35. Group Captain Augustine Vinod is with us. Always good to have you, sir. what a strange, fascinating story for those, who are not familiar with this. An aircraft where the pilot has punched out, obviously there was some kind of a mid-air emergency. One would imagine that the aircraft would be out of control and crash out of the sky, but the F-35 obviously has pretty advanced brains and computers. The damn thing decided to fly by itself, took on a life of its own, has obviously been cruising around on autopilot, has enough fuel to cruise, Group Captain, and the stealth means nobody knows where it is.
Absolutely. The stealth actually created all the problem. But let me break it down, Shiv, for the sake of our viewers and you as well. Very similar case happened even in Indian Air Force. Not many people are aware of this. A friend of mine, slightly senior to me, ferrying an aircraft from somewhere in the west to Nasik, where it was supposed to undergo some major repair, had an oxygen failure. And he probably passed out, and the aeroplane continued to fly till the fuel completely finished, and it glided and, of course, crashed, and the pilot perished with the aeroplane. So what I'm trying to get at is, A, there is autopilot. B, there is something called fly-by-wire. Fly-by-wire in itself is an autopilot, because fly-by-wire flies the aeroplane, keeps the aeroplane stable, even if the autopilot is not in the system. Right. So Mirage 2000, Rafale, all these new modern aeroplane, they will fly by itself. If I leave the control for something, I mean, there are many times when pilot needs to leave the control to do something else. Or probably when I'm cruising and I don't want to keep holding the stick, I just leave the stick and it flies by itself. So all the modern aeroplane has this. But the second issue is this particular place, the Charleston Air Force Base, is actually in the Charleston International Runway. It is in the western portion of this Charleston International Runway where this marine base is.
Right.
But next to that, Shiv, is the Cooper River. And beyond Cooper River, like you said, it is completely marshland.
Right.
Let me bring another example here. 6 months senior to me, just before as I reached the Tejpur base, we had a MiG-21 like this going missing in the marshland.
Wow.
Crashed with the pilots. You know how long it took for us to recover him? 10 years.
Wow.
10 years later is when we found the crash, because it is marshy. It just sinks in the aeroplane. We found the aeroplane completely intact, by the way. And the pilots, of course, 10 years later, the pilot was not there, but his overall was there with a copy of his Bible still in his pocket.
My God, incredible.
So that is the kind of marshland we are talking about here.
Yeah.
Now,
and there are lakes also there. There are lakes also there.
And the sea. Charleston is a sea coast. If you remember the original 13 colonies which fought in the Civil War, and Charleston had a big role to play in the Civil War. So if it was heading the other way, it would have fallen into the sea. And if it has fallen into the sea, there is no way you will be able to find out. But the most important.
Yes, complete your point.
The third most important aspect is the SOP. Probably there has been an SOP violation. I'm sure somebody is looking at this program in US. There's something called emission control, or MCON. You can activate different levels of MCON in this aeroplane automatically and even from the ground. So if you activate MCON 0, that means you can't find them. But there are peacetime, you need to find this aeroplane to sequence them behind somebody in an international airport, isn't it?
I understand what you're saying, which is what brings me to my next question, Group Captain, which is that, people are justified in wondering, how can you lose track of your own aircraft in your own airspace? You've got a congresswoman saying you're going and asking public for help to find an $80 million jet. There's also a level of absurdity to this.
Absolutely, and I have no doubt in my mind, and with all due respect, I'm saying this, US Marine Air Force is different from US Air Force. And US Marine Air Force, तवज्जो Marine के ऊपर है, ना कि pilots के ऊपर. So, there could be, I'm just thinking aloud, there could be that there is some kind of an SOP violation, or the ground controllers or somebody didn't follow the SOP correctly, because it is in auto mode, in MCON auto mode, it goes into self-identifying itself all the time during peacetime, especially when you're flying out of a civilian airbase where it's an international airbase. Mind you, Charleston is a very busy international airbase. So you can't have unknown fellow floating around in the sky when civilian aeroplanes are flying around.
Scary.
So there has been an SOP violation, Steve. And what is it that only the internal inquiry of US Navy will be?
And we're going to have to we're going to have to wait for those details. But I very much appreciate the fact that you also brought in the Indian context to that. How fascinating that this has happened even in an Indian context. We are able to talk about this particular American story with a slight bit of levity, because thankfully the pilot has survived. He ejected safely. And thank God for that. He's safe, and that's also to the tribute to the SOPs of the U.S. Air Force, that things are safe. But this aircraft is still out there. It's, by now it obviously the facts stand testament to the fact that this must have come down somewhere. They just don't know where it is. But many, many difficult questions to answer, and many learnings also from this. Group Captain Vinod, really good to have you. Thank you very much. We had limited time on that. I would have loved to chat more, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks very much for enlightening us on that.